Good morning, everyone. A big welcome to UNIFY 2019. I am super excited to welcome you all today to our second annual Growth Marketing Summit. For those of you who were able to join us for UNIFY last year, I think that you know that there was quite a bit that we had to live up to from our inaugural event. Everything from the content, the speakers, the venue, the experience. Everything is going to be bigger and badder this year. I don't know how the team managed to do this, but we're going to raise up the notch, so you guys are in for a real treat today. Before we get started with UNIFY, I wanted to remind, for folks who weren't able to join us last year, what the meaning of UNIFY really is all about. The word unify in itself represents one of the guiding bedrock principles behind Singular. And it really resonates in what we call the 3 core values that we stand. And really from that is really where the inspiration of UNIFY came from. It is what we believe in as a culture. The word itself is one of the fundamental things that we tell employees when they come into Singular is that we want to see them as family, we treat each other as family, but not only our employees and our team, we really see our customers and our partners as very much part of that extended family. Whenever there's exciting things to celebrate, we want to come and be the first one to help you celebrate as well. But most importantly, actually, when there are challenges that we overcome in the industry. And we all know that there are fun challenges that come every day, and of which really is when we come together, discuss what these challenges mean for us, and most importantly, come together with these collective learnings of what we're going to do to address them together. And last but not least, UNIFY as a mission. One of the most unique things and one of the things I enjoy most about my job is really that we work with some of the best and brightest minds in the industry. Many of you in the room today are actually leading the transformation of some of the most exciting changes that the industry is overcoming right now. Testing of new growth marketing strategies, the kind of MarTech stacks and advancements of what we've done over the years to come. We learn from you as much as we collaborate with you each and every day. And the very fact is we sit at a very unique vantage point by way of working with some of the best and brightest minds in the industry and really feel that there's an arsenal of collective learnings that in terms of what we want to do is really make sure that we impart these learnings to the larger industry. And that's really the meaning behind UNIFY. It is to collect the best and brightest minds in the industry, to come together, share these collective learnings, most importantly, learn from each other's challenges and mistakes. And what's most important to me really is I think that building the meaningful relationship with the folks in this room, because there's some amazing people in the crowd today. And I'm truly humbled, inspired, and honored to be here. Now, before we kick off with the agenda for the day, I wanted to take a second to thank some of our amazing sponsors for coming together to make this day happen. Please give them a big round of applause because we couldn't have made this happen without you guys. In coming today with today's agenda, what we did before the event, this was actually months in advance, we actually surveyed the marketers in the room to best understand what is it in terms of the key challenges that you guys are facing, not only within yourself, but across the organizations that you work for today. And the results are in. Claiming the #1 spot is really managing scale and finding operational efficiency across the various growth marketing efforts that you guys are doing. Cross-platform, NTA, incrementality continues to be a hot topic, and you're gonna see this discussed through various sessions today. Silo data accuracy, and making sure the effective governance of that data. This is really something that is core to Singular and something that we will impart not only to today, but just in general guidelines and practices in our day-to-day practice. Last but not least, and kind of topping out the top 4 is fraud detection and prevention. Still is a big prevailing topic. Fraudsters are becoming smarter, they're becoming more adaptive every day, and so we have a dedicated session today addressing just this, and hopefully you guys can leave with some good practices in terms of what some of the latest on this front are. So, without further ado, In a minute, after our first keynote session, we're going to have John Coetzee come on board. He will be your MC for the day. But first and foremost, I wanted to introduce our first session of the day, which will be looking at the state of industry of growth marketing. Please give me a warm round of applause for our CEO and my fellow co-founder, Gadi Eliashiv.
Okay, let's see, check, yep, it's working, awesome. Wow, this is phenomenal. So many people, this is crazy. I'm really excited and a bit nervous. I hope you can't tell, but it's just phenomenal. It's also weird seeing my face in such a large screen. I'm not used to that. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that we have such a phenomenal audience today and to see so many familiar faces, but also see a lot of new faces and just people that we've known across the years, people that are joining the family and are here to talk about amazing topics, network, share some amazing content. And so this day is going to be super exciting. There's a lot of amazing content we put together coming from a lot of you guys in the audience, speakers, panelists. So really excited about that. And what we thought would be interesting to kick off the day with was an analysis of some of the trends we've seen in the last year and kind of following off our last year's UNIFY. What are the main things that we talked to with our customers, and how do we see solutions evolve in the space? And I guess in general, what are the kind of the big trends we've seen happening? And towards the later half of the day and towards the ending session, we're also going to talk about sort of predictions for next year and what we think going to be occupying us for the next 12 months. But let's start with today. And so just to kind of introduce ourselves, Singular, I'm sure you guys have heard of the company if you're in our conference, but just a quick background, we're a marketing intelligence platform. Our mission is to help growth organizations and marketers make better decisions with data, with insights, with technology. We've grown a lot. We're pretty big, spread across multiple continents and a global operation, which is really exciting. And a lot of our growth, a lot of our product and sophistication came from our customers. And so, I want to take a second to thank everybody. We've been fortunate to work with some of the smartest brands that I've ever seen, some of the best companies in the world, and also really exciting and cool companies. So thank you for helping us make the product better. So let's start with kind of trend number one that we've seen happening across the board. So as marketing tech gets more complicated, we see a lot of companies thinking about how do I consolidate my stack? How do I converge that to a single platform? There's a lot of moving pieces, there's a lot of elements to a marketing stack, but it seems that companies are looking for ways to simplify or unify their stack in whatever way possible. And when we started the company, we basically saw this really complex universe, which still holds true today. I mean, this is a glimpse of that. But every marketing organization has to deal with so many different systems, non-matching data sets and APIs, not a clear way to combine that data together. And essentially, that basically created the challenge that was the catalyst for us starting the company. And when we first started, we said, what's going to be the foundation of this platform? What are we actually going to do at the core? And the core was, you guys can guess, it was data. It was how do we bring all the data together? So we built connectors to thousands of systems, and we parsed all the data in. We did data governance, which is a fancy word for cleaning up the data. And we did a lot of combining, so people could actually see what happens in their marketing stack, from how much money am I spending, what are the results I'm getting, across to anything in between. And on top of that, there has been a few evolutions. We added an analytics component, so people can access the data, run reports, which is kind of obvious. We added some automation elements. And the platform expanded even more. We expanded to attribution. We have our own fraud prevention, which we're going to spend some time talking about today, and user experience products. And this has been evolving quite a bit as a platform. And one of the things that we always did, which was just a necessity in the industry we're in, is to be vendor agnostic, which means that you can use Singular and you can plug different components in and out as you see fit, and you can also use third parties to complement our offering. And that was a really powerful engine for us, still until this day, because marketing stacks are just so convoluted. There's too many systems to connect, and that's a lot of the power of the platform. And one of the things that we've seen happening in our customer base, which was interesting, people asked me about this, and they said, hey, Gadi, you guys added so many products in the last year or two. Are people using them? What is the adoption? So we're really excited to see that, and this, 2 years ago was 0, but now it's 60% of our customers basically streamlining their stack and essentially getting a comprehensive offering from Singular where you have all of the core data layer that we talked about, but additional services such as mobile attribution, the fraud, the audiences, user experience products, et cetera. And so that's been a really interesting trend. And to be honest, we see it from our customer base, but we do see marketers talk about it all the time. Ideally, any sort of unification will go our way, but I think that it's a trend that marketers feel and talk about a lot. How do I simplify my stack? How do I not deal with multiple vendors, and I kind of try and make that a bit more sane and digestible? And when we thought ourselves, why is that happening? It's pretty obvious reasons. People want to establish a single source of truth. They want to have one system with numbers they can count on. People want to have data consistency. They want all these feeds to use the same language, to have the same schema, to be able to be comparable in an easy manner. And so being able to consolidate your stack to the right platform really helps do that. And then granularity and accuracy. Usually when you use more integrated systems, you can achieve better data. So that's been a really interesting trend. And obviously last one is less contacts, less contracts, just easier to deal with. So just interesting trend, and I'd love to hear from people after the sessions what they think about that. The second trend that we've seen is, we call it the rise of the CGO, but really it's the rise of growth organizations. I mean, growth has been a word that has been used forever, but we've seen a lot of companies basically create a growth function, and doing that to basically change how normally we've done marketing. And I chose Lyft as an example. I'm sure that Lyft people in the crowd would be flattered, but I just think Lyft did a really good job to establish a growth organization. And essentially what we see is companies setting up this VP of growth or chief growth officer, and it's basically an organization who's a growth catalyst as part of the company. They report to CEO or CMO. They're cross-functional by nature, which means that they can deal with product, with data science, with finance, with engineering, with marketing, of course. What they do is they're trying to figure out not only what marketing tactics am I going to use, but also what technology do I need to bring into the table to enable the rest of the company. And Lyft is a really cool example because they put really high caliber people as their VPs of growth, both the previous one and the current one, entrepreneurial people who can manage a really large scale operation. They combine multiple disciplines into the same organization: user acquisition, CRM, data science, engineering. They have complex challenges. It's a cross-platform challenge. They have web, mobile, different parts of the marketplace. But also it's a key function in the company, especially now as it's growing. And one thing you see that happens a lot is when these functions become successful, they kind of take on more and more functions from the company over time. And so I'm sure that we'll see as growth organizations become more successful, they'll take on more traditional aspects of the company and the different marketing elements. And what's interesting is that Lyft is not alone. So these are just a few logos from people in the crowd who are having growth organizations in their own company and are basically building the same setup. So really interesting. We're obviously excited about that because that trend is very positive to having companies be aware of their data, having companies think about more advanced strategies, understanding technologies, and kind of being able to take that to the next level. So that's really exciting. What we did to kind of analyze that trend is we also surveyed about 700 brands, and we chose all kinds of brands, not necessarily mobile related, and we've seen a few interesting numbers. The first is that organizations, growth organizations, tend to have, on average, bigger teams in the marketing department. This could be perhaps some sort of a bias. Maybe bigger companies tend to establish that, but it is an interesting fact. We've seen that growth organizations talk a lot about data. How do I bring my data together? How do I move it from A to B? How do I set up my database? And how do I make sure it's all granular so I can make better decisions? And a big component has been data science, AI. How do I enable my team to make better data research on top of the data I have in my growth function? And then lastly, apps. Even though not all businesses have mobile apps, and maybe not all businesses necessarily need to build mobile apps tomorrow, apps do seem to have an interesting correlation with growth organizations. Maybe it's the newer brands, maybe it's just mobile first, kind of think that way. But we do see that a lot of the brands, in fact, 77% are talking about how apps are critical to their growth. So very interesting to see. Cool. Trend number 3, and I'm sure everybody heard some of these words in the last year, and it's actually something we talked about last UNIFY. We had this interesting kind of diagram talking about the life cycle of a customer and how they basically go through different systems. And so cross-platform is picking up steam really fast. And essentially, oh, this slide is not related. I'll wing it. Okay. Wait, this is a test to see if I know the presentation. So basically, we have when you think about some of the products in the past, we've seen a lot of products that were built for a single platform. And we had a mobile-only product, we had a web-only product, maybe a console-only product. And now it feels like a lot of these products, perhaps due to the success of some business models that have proven it can work really well, a lot of these products are taking a really holistic cross-platform view. But it's not only that, it's the big platforms themselves, things that Google and Apple are doing, kind of blurring the line. I mean, if you watched WWDC yesterday, Apple announced that you can run iPad apps on Mac with some customization of the code. Google talked about their gaming service and how you could basically run that across their hardware in a remote fashion. So suddenly, game development, app development could be done very differently. And I was talking to Dimitri from Airbnb last night, and he told me something interesting. He said that he feels like 2 years ago, it was kind of a luxury to talk about cross-device, and now it's a necessity. It's basically critical to your business. So we agree. And basically, when we talk to our customers, we saw the following challenges that people face. The first one is you have now a lot more data sets to deal with. So again, the same problem of incomplete, incompatible data sets. The second challenge is how do you ensure that the same granularity you had before, let's say you had data that was clean and you got really deep insights, how do you ensure that you can get the same consistency across all the different platforms you're working with? And lastly, which is a really critical topic, how do we track the user between these devices in a way that we could understand ROI correctly? If I'm spending money on one platform and I see conversions on another, I need to be able to link that together. And that's a technical challenge companies need to overcome. They need to figure out how they do that. And also kind of change the way that their BI is built and look on the data and the analysis. So it has some profound implications. And so some of the solutions we've had and we worked on with our customers. So first one is how do we give them more data? We basically expanded our connectors across probably another, 500 new platforms, whether it's changes to existing ones, whether it's integration of new ones. Some platforms we never imagined we would integrate with. But essentially kind of empowering that concept of unified data and bringing that all together. The second thing is granularity across the funnel. How do we ensure that people have the same granularity? We kind of borrowed the ideas we had from mobile. So in mobile, we oftentimes just standardize everything from the link creation to how we gather the data and how we combine it. And we pretty much did the same thing on other platforms. So we have customers using this aspect of the platform for the web or maybe some of the console or PC. And essentially the same concept applies there. And then lastly, for cross-device attribution, if we're already ingesting mobile events and web events, the idea is how can we essentially receive customer data across the different platforms and do the stitching on the back end. And there's basically a bunch of connectors that you can use to do that. And on top of that, there's a layer of identity resolution to understand if this user on mobile is the same user on web. And oftentimes, it's a first-party identifier that we leverage on. But this could also be other third-party graphs that we can leverage. And some people in the audience have different setups and different ways to build that graph. But the key idea here is to be flexible and be able to bring that solution to the market. Cool. Trend number 4, ad mon. And that's how we call it, ad monetization or in-app advertising. Essentially, that's been a big trend that we've seen people talk about. And I think it's mostly been because it's not a new thing. The industry is based on the fact that people have ads in their apps. Otherwise, this user acquisition would not work. But I think that if you're really successful in an extreme way, really successful businesses have basically paved the way to show that you can build quite a unique business model based 100% on ads and I think everybody in the audience can imagine hyper-casual games as one example, but we've actually seen some other businesses that monetize amazingly well based on ads. Well, you can think of Facebook and Google, but I'm also talking about less, more independent companies that are basically innovating in that space. And so what we've seen is that this sort of created new challenges for growth organizations. We have basically now two distinct teams with different goals. And sometimes it's the same person, like in a lot of companies, but sometimes it's different teams. And essentially there's two different objectives. For monetization teams, there's the constant challenge of how do I maximize ad revenue? I have assets, I want to maximize them. And what they need is an analysis of their performance across the monetization partners, across the mediation partners, and a lot of control, a lot of functionalities they can build any kind of waterfalls and basically optimize that. And for the acquisition teams, as always, we want to acquire more customers, do it profitably, maximize ROI as much as we can. And what they needed is basically a solution for incorporating that ad revenue piece into the ROI formula. So any decision I make incorporates the revenue I'm making from ads. And so we work with customers on two solutions that were really interesting to build, because you kind of see the ad monetization space has so many dynamics. There's how people used to work a few years ago. There's how people work today. There's a lot of trends. There's a lot of things that could change this dramatically. We just talked yesterday about header bidding and how, it's not a new term, but more and more networks are implementing that and could simplify this problem dramatically. But at the same time, there's like kind of new mediation platforms and new technologies. And so to kind of stay afloat and be able to consistently see all the data in a single place, we worked on this analytics capability to aggregate, normalize, and basically provide all the key metrics that monetization teams would care about. Like, what is my eCPM? What is my fill rate? That's not necessarily tied to user acquisition, but tied to my monetization. What kind of instances do I have, or placements? And how do I stack up, and how do I get that performance over time? And so that was sort of the first part of the solution. And the second part was for the acquisition teams, which, as you guys can guess, we talked about it last year at UNIFY. It was incorporating the ad revenue into the ROI formula so that UA teams could just simply operate the same way they have with in-app purchases or other offline sources of revenue. Ad revenue should be part of the equation, and now it is. So really excited to kind of put that product to use and have customers basically rely on this data to make better decisions. Oh, last trend, ad fraud. Still a pain in the ass. Ad fraud is, it's even worse. It's a sort of a hidden cancer that takes away money and makes us take the wrong decisions. And I feel that today in the industry, we're seeing, and apologies for the ugly graph, I was trying to draw something. I'm not great at drawing, but what I wanted to say here is that essentially we're at a point where 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, there's so much hype around fraud. Vendors love to talk about it because it's sexy. It's technology, it's complex, it's not really clear, it scares people. And what happened is there was a lot of buzz around that. But then afterwards, there was pretty much stagnation. There wasn't any key innovation in the space. And what happened is that fraudsters got more and more sophisticated to the point where people feel secure when they have something that prevents fraud, but it doesn't mean that it's 100%. It doesn't mean that it's capturing what they need to capture. It doesn't mean that it's even staying up to date. And today we're at a point where the kind of attacks we're seeing from the data we're analyzing shows some insane sophistication from fraudsters. And it makes sense. They have a lot of financial motive. And what we need to do as an industry is we need to kind of break away from this path and try and find a 10x solution. How do we find something so exponentially powerful that it would prevent so many attack vectors from fraudsters even succeeding in doing what they're doing? And it's not going to be a silver bullet, but there's some things we could do better as an industry to have a dramatic impact. And so how do we stay ahead? I'm going to tell you what Singular decided to do, and you guys could take that as sort of food for thought. But we basically had a few things that we chose to focus on and things that we believe in. The first one is you have to make an investment as a company, which is kind of obvious, in fraud. But it also matters what is the approach that you take to analyzing that. So what we did is we basically hired people who had cybersecurity background because we thought it's the closest parallel we can have to fraudsters. I mean, people who create malware, they reverse engineer, they find vulnerabilities, and fraudsters are not that different. In fact, the same use case could transfer over. So having people who are experts in cybersecurity was really key to that. The second point is, we call that innovative research. But what it means is making bets. We're taking a research team and we're giving them some speculative projects that could end up in wasted months of work. But if we succeed, we're able to find something truly remarkable. And that was sort of the guideline, which is let's go beyond the low-hanging fruits because these are the easiest to bypass. Let's try and do some deep research and see if we can find something more meaningful. And I guess the last point that's kind of tied to the innovative research is oftentimes in the industry today, there's a lot of talks about signals and probabilistic methods and anomalies, but it seems like one area that almost everybody neglects is the deterministic methods. And so if you do research and you're also incorporating not just some statistical methods, but also not being afraid of reverse engineering the operating system, understanding the mechanisms, understanding how you could detect fraud better on the device, you could actually achieve more powerful results. And that's exactly what we did. And there's 2 findings that we have. And now I'm a bit nervous because I don't know if the slides are out of order. They are? Okay. Awesome. So the first thing is that we're extremely excited to announce, and that's something that our team has put so much work into that I'm really proud we're talking about today. It's really our method for preventing fraud on iOS devices. This is install fraud, which speaks to the user acquisition audience in the room. And basically, we found a proprietary method to detect basically faking devices, faking installations on iOS in a manner that doesn't exist in the industry today. And a lot of it is because we didn't just confine ourselves to using statistical methods. We actually did go deep into the mechanisms that generate, that track the install, that generate the signatures, etc. And when we first looked at these results, I was kind of shocked. I'm like, holy shit, there's no way these channels, so A, B, and C, all the way to G, are actual marketing channels. And this is real customers' data, obviously aggregate a few customers. And the percentage is how many of the installs are fake. And obviously when we saw that, the first thing we did was call the customers and say, hey, something's really wrong with what you're doing. But what was shocking is to see how not all solutions are born alike. And that's probably the biggest misconception when people feel like, okay, I have a solution, I'm protected, but it doesn't always mean that you truly are protected. And I guess one more thing I'll mention is people often think it's a specific bad channels that you should avoid. The challenge today is that we've found, and there's people in the audience that could probably talk about that in closed groups. We found fraud even in the biggest channels because what happens is it's not even the channel's fault. People need to make money. They find vulnerabilities in SDK. They try and penetrate and get to the premium inventory any way they can. And so it's just crazy to see that. And I'm really proud of the fraud team for putting that forward. And so that's kind of step one. And then there's one more thing that I'm not allowed to talk about yet because it is still a company secret. But it's something really massive we found when we did that research. And we're going to announce that in a few weeks. I asked everybody to stay tuned. But it could change the numbers so dramatically that it can impact a lot of the decisions of people in the room. And so this is something we're going to announce soon. And last thing I want to say when we talk about fraud, as I said before, companies love to talk about it. I love to talk about it. I'm sure the audience would love to hear about it. But one thing we wanted to do is basically put our money where our mouth is. In what we're proposing today to the audience is anyone in the audience, any company that attended Singular, we're offering a complimentary fraud audit that we will do with our fraud research team. We'll basically help you audit your data, and you can talk to the Singular people in the room for more details. And it'll help you see, in the best case, maybe there's nothing wrong and you're actually well protected, but maybe there's another case where there is some fraud that you're unaware of, and there is a lot of money being wasted or decisions that are being made incorrectly. And so we're offering that as a value-add service for our customers and attendees of UNIFY. We've done a few of these already. We found some remarkable results, which gives us confidence. We can't promise any setup will be the same and we'll find the exact results, but there is a lot to find once you're using the right tools and using different approaches. So that's pretty exciting, and we hope that you guys make good use of that. Cool. Okay, well, that's the end of my session. Thank you everybody so much.